I've been getting several requests, and I promised this at Christmas when we gave you the little vegetable choppers, that I was going to show you and teach you what my recipe is for my Pico De Gallo, salsa, whatever you want to call it, or as my friend Frank calls it, the Pico De Dimu. Ingredients, you're going to start off with tomatoes. These are, I would consider to be a little bit more on the larger side. Normally you can use like 3 small tomatoes, 2 medium-sized tomatoes. This is probably more large. I don't know if I'll be able to fit both of these in there, but I may be able to. You want 1 yellow sweet onion. I've already peeled the outer skin off of this onion, so it's ready to go. A jalapeno, a lime, some fresh cilantro, salt. Your tools will be a sharp knife, cutting board. I use a lime squeezer. If you don't have one of these, you can use your hand or something. And of course, our device here. So what I do normally is I'll start by coring out the tomato tops. Just put the knife at an angle, kind of core out the cap. Then what I do is I like to make my work a little bit easier with the machine by going ahead. I don't want to just stick the whole tomato in there. It's going to be a little bit harder to chop. So I'll cut the tomato in half, slice each half into normally 4 slices. Take the top off. You want to make sure your blades are already in there. Put my tomatoes in. Alright. You can see already just with those 2 tomatoes, the bowl is pretty full. Do the onion next. Normally I'll use about 1/4 of an onion, but again, this is very much suited to taste. If you like a lot more onion in yours, you can add more. A lot of times I like to use a little bit more than 1/4 of an onion, just depending on how much tomato. If there's a lot of tomato, I have large tomatoes, I may use more onion, but I use a little bit more than 1/4 here, since those tomatoes are pretty large. And again, I'll help the machine by going ahead and cutting that onion into a few pieces. Next, I will do cilantro. You got the fresh cilantro. You could just cut it and drop it in just the way it is. I like to take the large stems off. This is probably the most time-consuming thing of this whole project here, is taking these fat stems off. And again, you don't have to do it. It's just my preference. With the cilantro, there really is no, just as with all the other ingredients, there really is no exact right or wrong in terms of quantity. It's really just to taste and to preference. I really like cilantro and what it adds to the recipe. So I like to go a little bit heavy on that. So again, if you had to think how much you're using, I mean, I've got kind of a handful here. That kind of gives you an idea. And that's probably about the amount I like to use right there. Next thing we'll do is move on to the jalapeno. The jalapeno I'll normally dice pretty small, just so I make sure that once it's in there, it's in small pieces and nothing gets missed. Nobody, except for me maybe, wants to take a big honking bite of a jalapeno. Every jalapeno is a little bit different in terms of how hot it is, and it's also going to vary a little bit by what part of the jalapeno you're putting in. The higher you get toward the stem, there's a lot more seeds, and that's where the heat is at. So if I'm starting with the bottom tip, I know there's going to be fewer seeds, but I'm going to go ahead and start slicing this. And you'll get the hang of this a little bit just from once you've done it a few times, and you'll get some batches that are going to be real spicy, some that don't have any spice. And you'll get a feel for what you want to do, what you like. But once I get my jalapeno kind of sliced up, in this case I probably made about 6 slices. I'll go ahead and cut these in half. Cut the slices in half, and then I'll go back across them, dice them up. Same thing here. And again, all I'm doing is I'm making sure that when they get in that machine, nothing's going to get missed and nobody's going to get a really large chunk. Get those done, put them in. And once you get through with this, you can always adjust it to taste. You can always add a little bit of something. Salt, I don't know why I started doing this, but I generally measure by hand. Just pour, it's probably about, if I had to guess, about a tablespoon. Maybe a little bit more of salt, and I'll spread that in. Salt is something that I found that really makes or breaks this. Sometimes you'll eat it and it just tastes a little bit weak, and what you got to do is you got to add a little salt to it. Somehow it really brings out the richness of all this variety of flavors. So don't skimp on the salt. I want to encourage you on that. The last ingredient is the lime. I'll cut the lime in half, and the actual recipe for this calls for a half a lime. Oftentimes in our mix, we'll do a full lime, and that's, again, just for taste preference. And I think that really stemmed from Lori a little bit. She really likes it to be a little bit heavier on the lime. But I'll put it in the machine here, squeeze it, squeeze the juice out, and that's it. Do you want a second one of this, Lori?
Yes.
Okay. So Lori has made her request, and I will squeeze the other half of the lime. So, we've now got all the ingredients together. All we have to do is take the cap, put it on. You're going to twist, get it up seated, twist it to lock. I think it is now. And then you've got all this stuff packed in here, and you got your blades that are wedged down in between all this other stuff. So you really need to kind of give it a good grip and hold on to it tight when you get started. When you get started, the blades are serrated on one side and then just straight sharp on the other. So what you want to do is you want to move this handle back and forth to get sort of a chopping motion and get those serrated blades. But I'll take my left hand, put it flat, put some pressure down on this. I don't think these handles are very sturdy, so I won't try to rely on holding the handle. I like to lay my hand flat, and then I'll take and I'll start swinging this back and forth. Start getting it chopped up. Do that, I don't know, 15 or 20 times until you feel that the blades are swinging more freely. You'll be able to tell with the pressure when you start from once it starts getting loosened up. Once your blades are starting to free up, then you can start just turning it. The number of turns required is really going to be, again, based on your preference of how you like your pico to look. If you like it pretty chunky, then we're probably good with that. If you like it a little bit more pureed, then you might want to run the blade through it several more times. It really doesn't take many turns to have an impact. Once you've done that, pretty much taste it. Tastes very good. My preference would probably be a little bit more jalapeno. But it varies from batch to batch. And you can add a little more of this, a little more of that, whatever you like. I've heard, the original recipe actually called for garlic. And we don't add that. But that's all there is to it. Tomatoes, the yellow sweet onion, cilantro, jalapeno, lime, salt, and you've got a meal.